puppies, there we go. When facing a romantic rival, an individual is more likely to feel jealousy if their rival's achievements are in the same general field of their own aspirations. And we see this a lot on movies and whatnot. We see situations where the two individuals are actually competing against one another. There's something positive about one, there's something negative about the other. Usually the negative thing about the one is that he's an arrogant person. And the positive thing about the other one is he's so cute, right? Ryan Gosling, I don't know. You know, some of these individuals, I don't really, I watch movies all the time. I watched movies last night, I can't remember, I can't tell you what I was watching. Oh no, did anybody see that last night, the town hall with the kids from Lakeland? You just saw Curtis, sorry, of course you did. Okay, yeah, wow, that was a kick in the head. When that the lady from the NRA came on stage, oh my God, I thought they were going to kill her. I was hoping they would kill her. And of course, what did she say? Whose fault was it? Whose fault did it turn out to be, Curtis?
And
oh, what did she say? The police aren't doing a good enough job following up on this stuff. So she blamed the cops.
yeah.
Wow.
And also the video games and movies, violent video games.
Well, you can't argue with violent video games. I mean, he made all headshots. Now, where do you learn to make headshots? Well, the military doesn't teach you to make headshots unless you're a sniper. The only people that use headshots are snipers. Or if you want to kill a zombie. I mean, so the only way to kill a zombie is to shoot him in the head, right? We learned that a long time ago, like 5 years ago when we first made the zombie movies or whatever. Got to shoot him in the head. Okay, anyway. Why are relationships so important to our self-esteem? Why are relationships so important to your self-esteem? Why is high school is so painful for so many people? So why is that? What is it about relationships? Why does anybody care who you're romantically involved with? Why, when females get together, do they talk about how cute somebody is? Why, when guys get together, do the other guys judge the individual that you're going out with? Why do they do that? What's wrong with people? Why should anybody care? But you do, right? I mean, you talk about all these things. People talk about women select men by who their girlfriends think is cute.
I think.
Right? Isn't that the way it works? Or am I wrong? Have things changed?
I don't know.
Now we find people on the internet. Which one do we pick?
Farmersonly.com.
There you go. Well, I've been on that site.
Yeah.
How do we know if somebody's the right person or not?
I was just being kind. Yeah, I think that's how.
Is that you were being
That's
kind?
how I think that's how I put there.
Is that right? You're being nice to her?
Nice.
But you didn't care what you said. Yeah, the last thing in the world. And you didn't even ask them. But they just tell you.
But there was a rival. There was a romantic rival.
Uh-oh. And you beat him, huh?
Yeah.
Good job. Way to go.
I like that my husband was respectful. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't stupid.
He wasn't stupid?
Yeah.
Like most men are stupid?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me write the stupid part down. Write that down, Curtis. I need to know about that, the stupid thing. Despite how individualistic we may think we are, social relationships are a gauge of social acceptance or rejection. Social acceptance is conducive to thriving and surviving. So in order for me to have friends, in order for me to keep these friends, I've got to listen to what they have to say. And that makes everybody happy. It may be that I start a relationship with somebody, and my friends don't like her, so all of a sudden, either I've got a relationship with this lady, or I don't have any friends. That's my choice. Or I have friends. That's what it is. Okay, or I have friends. Now you know I don't have any friends. Acceptance or rejection. Anyway, so society wants you to accept them or reject them. It's the same way with religions, if you think about it. You go to a select church and they start talking about, well, unless you do this, you know, you're never going to go to heaven. You're going, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Well, what happens next? Well, what happens next is you have to leave the church, because your church is telling you you have to do this in order to go to heaven. So you have to leave. Now all of a sudden you've got to come up with a brand new church to go to. You got to find someplace else to go. Low self-esteem predicts an increased risk of depression, drug abuse, and some forms of delinquency if you have a low self-esteem. And so this is one of the things that we're looking at. This is one of the things that we deal with. This is one of the things that they're looking at with Nicholas Cruz. What the hell's going on with this kid? Why did he buy 10 rifles? Why did he take an AR-15 into the school with several banana clips and shoot the place up? Why did he do that? Well, what we're looking at is low self-esteem. His parents were on CNN last night, and I listened to what they were saying. These people were completely oblivious of the fact that they thought he had one gun, and he had 10. How do you hide 9 rifles? They were all rifles. He had no pistols. Was he depressed? What do you think? Why do you think he did it?
I think something clicked in his brain, like he maybe went on a manic episode or something and just lost it, you know? Or the devil possessed him.
The devil. Well, we can use the devil. That's a good one. Sure, why not? I mean, he killed 17 people, only wounded 14, which is kind of amazing.
Did he know those students?
I'm sorry?
Did he know those students?
Did he know the people?
Yeah.
They were all freshmen and sophomores. He was 19 years old. He'd been kicked out of school the year before, at 18. Did he know any of these kids? No. He was...
I thought he's 17.
He's 19.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's 19, and last year he got kicked out of school for all of this strange stuff. And of course, the people that were taking care of him seemed like they were completely clueless as to what was going on with this kid. According to the NRA person, she came, I don't know where she came up with the number. 39 times the police investigated. 39 times. Whether that's true or not, I mean, nobody could figure out where she came up with the figure.
I think it's maybe probably look at the artillery he had and probably thought he had so much power that he probably could unleash it in some way.
Why that school? Why these kids? I mean, they were kids, 14 and 15-year-olds.
I think it was hatred and built towards a plan, a hatred for the school, for the people, for the environment.
This is a school where I was kicked out of, so I'm going to go in there and just shoot the place up. We keep trying to come up with reasons as to why he did this. I do the same thing. I want to know what's going on with the guy in Las Vegas. Why a 64-year-old with all those guns and all those bump stocks and all that ammunition? My goodness, he could have killed everybody in that crowd. He had enough ammunition to kill everybody if he'd hit them all at one time. Potentially, of course, that's 30,000 people. Is a lot of people to shoot. But we try to come up with reasons, don't we? As psychologists.
We were talking about phobia. Would
Right.
that have been a part of something like to protect themselves in order to get all those guns, kind of like
I know.
superstition?
Yeah, okay,
Paranoid.
maybe, yeah. Who needs 10 guns? How many can you shoot at once? Well, the reality is you can only shoot one at a time, but I guess you could hold 2 in your hands at a time. He had 10 rifles. I don't know. Why do you need 10 rifles? to go hunting, don't hunt with an AR-15. Mate's too big a hole. Not the entry wound, it's the exit wound. It blows out, so you're going to be losing all your meat. I'm trying to help you out there. AK-47 is the same way. Yeah, so we try to come up with reasons as to why these things happen. Low self-esteem, and what we see is these individuals tend to be depressed. They tend to, with people with low self-esteem, they're looking for something. They're seeking something that will make them feel better about themselves. And potentially 10 rifles is what he needed to feel better about himself. And
Why would you sell those kind of guns? Why would you sell those kind of rifles? If you know that people aren't going to hunt with them, or if it's not going to be utilized in that manner, then why sell it on the market? And it seems like it's
very logical.
It's a whole setup to where you're encouraging this thing.
you are correct, but there is a reason why they do it. And yeah, there you go. Edison's back in the back going, he's after the bucks. He's after the bucks, exactly. Yeah, sure, you're going to sell it, and probably sell it for more money than it's worth. How much is a gun worth anyway?
$300, $400.
Who knows what it's worth? Whatever you can get for it, that's how much it's worth. Research shows that when faced with failure, people with high self-esteem are more likely to react with aggression. Roy Baumeister, because they can. This is one of the reasons why, what was the movie that I was watching the other day? Something about a kid that he's an alien and lights come out of his hands. And so the captain of the football team starts picking on him for no reason at all. Because he can, I guess. But once again, of course, the captain of the football team has high self-esteem. The captain of the football team is trying to seduce the girl that he's in love with, that kind of a thing. He asks her, well, why in the world are you putting up with this? And she says, well, look who he is. He's the captain of the football team. So it raises her prestige by going out with this guy, but he's a jerk, he's a bully. Why? Because he has high self-esteem. He's in charge of the school, so he can do whatever the hell he wants to do. Roy Baumeister has done a great deal of work with self-esteem and finds that people with high self-esteem are more likely to be obnoxious, to interrupt people when they're talking, to talk at people rather than to people. So that's really kind of... So think about that. The people with all the power. Donald Trump. When Donald Trump speaks, he won't allow anybody to interrupt it, or he will interrupt somebody else. And that was happening last night in that town hall meeting. They were interrupting each other back and forth, and it was really kind of interesting because Rubio that one kid asked Rubio a question, and Rubio started talking, and the kid started to interrupt him. And Rubio got louder. He started talking louder. And of course, this is just a 17-year-old kid. And of course, Marco Rubio is the senator from Florida. This guy's got a lot of prestige. The biggest ears I've ever seen. His ears are huge. They're just gigantic. But that's not important. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. But so the kid started interrupting him, and Marco got louder. And so the kid shut up, and he let Rubio talk, and then he started talking, and immediately Rubio interrupted him. Why? Well, he's got more prestige. The kid's 17 years old, and the other guy's one of 100 people in the United States, the U.S. senator. So what right did that kid have to have an opinion? And Marco, he interrupted him, and I thought he was obnoxious. I considered him obnoxious, and he did the same thing to the father. If you remember when the father was telling him about his daughter being shot in the back and killed, and he said, I want to like you, but I don't know if I can. And then he asked him a question about whether he would back taking away the guns, taking away assault weapons. And he came up with this this thing about, well, if we take away this gun, then there's 2,000 more that are just like it that won't be affected. So you're really not taking anything off the streets, is what he was trying to say. And of course, the guy just got pissed, and he started saying, no, you're wrong. And Rubio interrupted him as well, despite the fact that this guy was an adult. He just lost his daughter, and he wanted him to tell him something that would be positive as far as he was concerned. And what he wanted to tell him was, yes, he would back legislation to ban assault weapons. That's all he wanted. And Rubio wouldn't accept it, and he kept interrupting him. And he was talking at him, not to him. And that was fairly obvious. Of course, Donald Trump had a meeting with the children, with some of the kids from Parkland, to deal with the gun violence. And one of the things that he had a note card, and on the note card it said, "Tell them that you care." Tell them that you care. Bill Clinton was probably elected president because of one thing he said during one of the debates. He said, "I feel your pain." And after that, that became his watchword, "I feel your pain." The other thing had to do, it's the economy stupid was the other reason he was elected. But he kept saying that he felt people's pain. And people felt close to him because they felt like he cared, because he said that he felt their pain. And of course, that's one of the things we're never going to hear from Mr. Trump. Does he feel people's pain? I don't know. He didn't. Tell them that you care. By making excuses for ourselves, it helps to protect us from depression. This is our self-esteem. So we're maintaining our self-esteem. And one of the things that we do is that we make excuses. I always blame Edison. He's in the back of the room. Must be his fault. So I'm looking for somebody to blame. Sometimes I blame Francis. But usually it's Edison. He's in the back of the room, not listening to anything. Or he's smiling right now. So evidently he is listening to what I'm saying. But we do this in order to keep from getting depressed. I was supposed to film the lecture last night, and I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle the smell. And I apologize. I'm sorry if it insults anybody. I don't mean it. That's not the reason that I can't handle the smell of mutton.
Oh.
It has to do with something else. It has to do with dead bodies and whatnot. I know. I apologize. And last night I went home and I was worried because, you know, Sarah gets upset sometimes when you don't do what she tells you to do. Anyway, somebody else was filming the whole thing, and I wasn't that worried about it. I just couldn't handle it. I wanted to stay. I wanted to listen to what the guy had to say, but I just couldn't do it. The room smelled.
It was really packed.
Yeah, and the mutton was boiled. Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with.
It was probably ram. Ram smells worse than sheep.
I don't know.
It was mine.
I don't know. I've never recovered a female body. I've only recovered male bodies, so I don't know. It's close enough for me. I really don't want to smell the ram. Thank you very much. While depressed people may make more accurate appraisals of themselves, and it bothered me. It bothered me so much that I went to sleep on my stomach, which I never do. I never go to sleep on my stomach. I can't breathe. But I went to sleep on my stomach last night for a couple different reasons, I guess. But I was depressed. I was so depressed that the only thing I could watch was the town hall meeting. You know, I'm looking for other. You know, I need to take my mind off this ugly stuff. So I'm looking at other things, and I couldn't find a good movie. Zombieland was on last night. Geez, I just saw it a couple nights ago. I don't need to see Woody Harrelson
Searching for a Twinkie.
shooting zombies in the head again. That's okay. I'm good. Or Emma Stone almost getting her leg ripped off by a zombie. I don't need to see that again. While depressed people may make more accurate appraisals of themselves, the negative thinking tends to them deeper in depression. Is it better to be deluded than to be sad? And the answer is yes. Sure, fool ourselves, as long as you're happy. Like I've said before, if I could give you guys one thing, it would be happiness for the rest of your life. If I could do that, because that means you'll get to live longer. Happy people live longer. And I would do that if I possibly could. So try to be as happy as you possibly can. And if you have to be deluded in order to be happy, go ahead. What the hell? It's better than being depressed. We are humans, and we need balance in our lives. Our brains are always trying to be happy. It's trying not to be sad. It's trying not to be pathological. You don't want to be depressed. You don't want to be schizophrenic. You don't want to be manic. You don't want to be any of these things, because all of those things represent an imbalance in your brain. And your brain will try to balance itself with the upregulation and the downregulation. It's trying to balance itself. It's trying to be normal. It wants everything to be good. Up north, that means good. Right? Yeah. I'm trying to be good. I wasn't trying to use symbols that you couldn't recognize. Research shows that maintaining a high self-esteem, even when there is evidence to the contrary, reduces an individual's anxiety, even in the face of continuing threats. So if we are in a situation where horrible things are happening, we try to take our minds off of it. We do anything that we can so that we don't have to be in terror all the time. If you're under fire, one of the best jobs you can have if people are shooting at you is you're the radio operator. So you have to be wherever the officer is, because you're carrying the radio. So he needs to call in. So that's your job. You don't have to worry about the bullets zipping around, because your job is to stay with him. Now I've got something else to think about. I've got to stay with this other guy. And it takes your mind off of it. One of the best jobs in combat is to be the medic, because everybody wants to protect the medic. Nobody wants the medic to get hurt, because if he gets hurt, and you get hurt, then maybe you'll die. So yeah, everybody protects the medic. That's a really good job. Not only that, but as soon as somebody gets hit, your job is to take care of that person. And so you can concentrate on that person. You don't have to think about anything else. Does all this make sense? Mm-hmm. I hate to use that as an example, since none of you will ever be in combat, thank goodness. But you never know. Most university sorority members perceive those in their sorority as far less likely to be conceited and snobby than those in other sororities. If you've watched those movies, the Revenge of the Nerds was on the other night, and of course, the Pies, I can't remember what they're... Okay. Anyway, the Pies, they were kind of arrogant, and they were all the pretty girls and whatnot. And then the other people were the pigs. I can't remember why they were the pigs.
Omega Moose.
I'm sorry?
Omega Moose.
Omega Moo, yeah, Omega Moo. Thank you. You watched the Revenge of the Nerds too.
Yeah.
2/3 of the Americans feel that their child's public school is good, while seeing the nation's public schools is unable to teach. Most executives over-predict their firm's ability to produce. Of course, they're looking for a positive, and if you don't, they just fired the guy from Ford for sexual harassment or something. Well, the CEO of Ford. But if you don't make a positive prediction, then guess what? You get fired. So of course you do. You try to be as positive as you possibly can be. Well, if everything goes perfectly, we will produce this many cars, and everybody wants to buy Ford. How many people own Fords? I got 1 Ford, 2 Fords, 3 Fords, 3 Fords. Is that it? How about Chevy? I got 2, 3 Chevys, 3 Chevys and 3 Fords. This is good. What do we own? Dodge. And I own Mazdas, so there we go. My wife has a Honda.
And a Toyota Prius.
I'm sorry?
And a Toyota Prius.
Prius? Oh, that's a nice car.
I really like it.
It gets great mileage.
I agree.
I get 37 miles to the gallon in my Miata. And it's so much fun to drive. It goes so fast, but I don't drive fast. It's so much fun. You can drive out of any problem just by hitting the accelerator. It's just taking off. It's great. Such self-serving bias can lead an individual to gamble away their paycheck, having faith in their own good fortune. Once upon a time, I had a friend, this is when I was in the service, he got a letter from Reader's Digest. Back then, Reader's Digest had this lottery every year, and they gave away millions of dollars, or at least they said they did. I never knew anybody that won the $1 million, but Reader's Digest used to do this, and he got a letter, and he was convinced that he was going to win. Well, he got the same letter everybody else did, but he bought all kinds of stuff. He bought a new car. He had 3 kids, and he bought clothes for his kids. You know, he's living paycheck to paycheck, and this guy just blew everything, blew all of his money, because he was sure that he was going to win this whatever. And he didn't win. And he got in trouble because in the military you can't owe people a lot of money. It just doesn't work that way. They garnish your wages, and that's what they did with him. They garnished his wages. Barely gave him enough money for food. He couldn't buy any clothes for his family for months. And he had little kids. Pretty soon his kids were wearing high waters. It was kind of ugly. Anyway, but he had this idea that he was going to win, and he knew he was going to win. He was convinced he was going to win. And every time I tried to convince him that maybe you're not going to win, no, they sent me a letter, and this is what it said. It said, you may be a winner. You're one of 3, and they gave him 3 names, and of course his name was on top, and then there were 2 other names, but of course none of those people won, I'm guessing. I got the same letter he did. Self-serving bias will permit an individual to open a doomed business without proper background capital. Such self-serving bias possibly took us into Vietnam. It took the Soviets into Afghanistan, and it even sent U.S. forces into Iraq. And then we went into Afghanistan, and we're still there. Self-serving bias. Is there a reason why we're there? Is it to protect the oil? Whoops. Do we really need that oil? Self-presentation is the person we present to others. False modesty is the facade that people may present when they feel superior to someone else. So we all have a facade. This may take the form of insulting yourself, fishing for reassurance or praise. It also may be used to keep others from becoming envious or resentful. And so sometimes we build ourselves down. And that's so that other people won't hate us, won't be envious of us. We don't brag about ourselves. Because when we brag, it upsets people. It sets up a competition against other people. Sometimes people, then if they're Canadians, they take your leg out from under. Sometimes people sabotage their chances for success by creating impediments that make success less likely. This self-handicapping serves to protect the individual from dealing with failure. The failure is due to their own handicap, not their lack of ability. And we do handicap ourselves from time to time. We do this way too often. We know that we should have studied last night, but instead of studying, we watched television until 12:30 at night. And then we finally went to bed. And we didn't get enough sleep because we had to finish watching that movie. Are we self-handicapping? Yeah, we're self-handicapping. And we do this to ourselves all the time. When you were in high school, maybe you were smarter than everybody else. But you wanted to be normal, just like all the dumb kids in your class. So what do? You self-handicap over and over and over again. Happens all the time. Happens all too often. So the best athlete in your school, he's been the best athlete in the 7th grade, in the 8th grade, in the 9th grade, and suddenly he's got to compete for the varsity. All of a sudden he's got to join the varsity. So what does he do? He starts smoking, of course. Instead of trying to compete with the varsity, This gives him an excuse. Everybody knows he's the best athlete. And so for the rest of his high school career, people will be talking about, well, if Johnny had just tried, if he hadn't started smoking, why he was the best athlete in the school. He could have, you know the story.
What about rock stars? They have like the skill and
Right.
talent, but then they ruin themselves with singing, or they ruin themselves with drugs and.
Right.
would that
To a person. What excuse do they use when they do that? Why in the world did Tom Petty ever start using fentanyl? Why would they do that? The Rolling Stones were making money hand over fist. And everybody wanted to see the Rolling Stones. They were a little bit more provocative than other groups. Why in the world did their drummer overdose? Kill himself. He overdosed. They've got a guitar player that is the best guitar player in the world, and this guy is continually going into rehab. Why is that? Is it self-handicapping? Do they feel like they don't really deserve it? Why me? But to a person. Linda Ronstadt. Everybody loves Linda Ronstadt. She's this cute little girl from Tucson. I think she's from Tucson. She's from someplace in this area. Anyway, she's this cute little girl from Tucson. Everybody's madly in love with her. She's 19 years old. She has a hit song. So what does she start doing? Snorting cocaine, of course. She snorts so much cocaine that her nose dissolves. She loses her nose, all the cartilage in her nose. That's what happens when you snort cocaine. So she has to have her nose rebuilt. So does she stop now? No, she doesn't stop. Of course she doesn't stop. She keeps doing it. She could have produced all of these wonderful records, all this wonderful music. Everybody loves her voice. And so she sings for the next 40 years. And now what's wrong with her? She's my age. Linda Ronstadt's my age. But she can't come into this room and talk to you guys. She's suffering from Parkinson's disease, induced by the cocaine. What a wonderful voice she has. Prince, 50 years old, overdoses on fentanyl, dies in an elevator. Why do they do this stuff?
Yes, there you go.
They can't handle success. Maybe that's it. Maybe they don't like to tour. Who was the Beach Boy that couldn't tour? The fat guy. Wilson. Dan Wilson? Don Wilson? I can't remember. Anyways, Brian Wilson. It was Brian Wilson. Yeah. So all the other Beach Boys, of course, they have to tour. But Brian can't because he's got this psychological thing about being on stage, and he always looks down and he's playing the piano, the whole thing. And everybody else is, up there dancing around, and he can't do it. He just can't do it. So he stops touring, and they replace him with somebody else. But here's Brian Wilson, and of course, of the Beach Boys, how many of them are still alive? I think there's 3 of them that are still alive, and Brian's one of them. But of course, he hasn't gone on stage in forever. Why are we doing this? Oh, we're talking about self-handicapping. Just as people attribute their failures to external causes, they themselves may choose to place the impediment as a form of self-protection. This is how they protect themselves. Sure, I could have been the best singer in the whole wide world, but I used cocaine. So now I've got an excuse for not being the best singer in the whole wide world. Examples of self-handicapping: reducing preparation for important individual athletic events, giving one's opponent an advantage, report feeling depressed, perform poorly at the beginning of a task in order not to create unreachable expectations. I had a student when I was up at Fort Belknap. She took her preliminary tests so that they could place her in the right classes. Well, she was really good at math, but she tanked the math portion of the test so that she would be able to take classes with her friends. She missed graduating with an AA degree by 1 class because she had to take all these preliminary, these rudimentary math classes. She could have passed college algebra in 1 class. She could have done that. Why do you do that kind of stuff?
Mine was in grade school though. They made us do these tests to find out what classes we were going to go
Right.
to. And we had one friend, she was like really pretty and really popular, you know. So me and my cousin, we didn't want to be split up. So we just
Take the
basically
test.
copied her test, and we ended up going through grade school and high school with her. And,
At least you got to go to high school with pretty girl and the
Yeah.
popular girl.
and now she's like really high up there on the tribal council. She's like really smart. She did like 20 years in law enforcement.
What a surprise, an attractive person being way up there on the tribal council. Could it have anything to do with her looks? Of course not. No, we don't look at people. We listen to what they have to say, and we decide whether they're good or bad by what they look like. Yeah, Marco Rubio could never have been president. Its ears are too big. We look at people. I know, it was so depressing, because she missed by one class. Then she went to get a bachelor's degree, and she had to delay by a whole semester to get into her bachelor's program. If she had done what she needed to do in the beginning, everything would have just fallen into place. But as it was, she was always like a semester behind. She got this wonderful job, this fabulous job. She was a brilliant lady. She got this wonderful job, but she was one semester away from finishing her bachelor's degree. So eventually they had to fire her, because they fired her with the understanding that she'd finish her bachelor's degree. And she missed it by one semester, by one class. She missed everything by one class. Not to try as hard as they could during a tough ego-involving task. And of course, if your ego is involved sometimes, you don't want to do your best. Impression management, self-presentation often happens without conscious effort, especially with someone new or with members of the opposite sex. We tend to put our best foot forward and attempt to make an impression on these individuals. Just like Andrea and her attractive friend. Was she your friend? Did she ever become your friend? Or
She was my best friend.
she was your best friend, and now she's important up in the glacier area, in the Blackfeet area. I congratulate you. I don't have any friends like that.
And see, her whole family, you know, her whole family's like really pretty, you know, the brothers, the mother, she's a singer, they sing in the church choir, and, you know, they're all in law enforcement.
People go to church just to see them singing,
Yeah.
because they're so pretty.
No, they have pretty voices.
Okay. I'll bet you that there are people that go to church just to look at them, because they stand up in front of the congregation and sing.
Well, my friend Christy, she's not really a vain person.
Mhm.
You know, like a lot of people are really vain and really conceited and everything.
Does she realize how pretty she is?
When we were younger, she used to be really conceited, and we would like beat up ugly people. No, I was just
So I need to stay away from Blackfeet country. I'll get beat
No,
up.
I was just kidding, but she's the type of person now that doesn't have Facebook or anything like that.
Mm.
So she's really humble, and I think it's probably because of how big of bullies we used to be, because we were pretty bad.
When I was in high school, we had this redheaded lady, and she was the queen of this and the princess of that, and she was a head cheerleader, you know, the whole thing. She was mean. And she was so mean that when we had she has never come to a reunion. She's afraid to come back, because she was an unpleasant person. I can't use the B word, not on tape anyway. Anyway, she was really unpleasant. And so she has stayed away from everybody because,
Well, you know, like, we used to be really bad bulliers, and there was this girl, we would call her mosquito fat, and I don't even know where that word came from, you know. Well, anyway, we picked on her so much in high school and grade school that during our 18th, during graduation, we had a big bonfire, and she came up to us and she goes, you, and you. Let's go. And she took each and every one of us one by one, and she beat the living crap out of us.
that's such a happy story.
But after that, she became a really good friend.
Well, of course. Oh man, self-monitoring, being attuned to the way one presents. See, that's the happy ending to this story. I was so worried about mosquito fat. Is that what you call it?
Yeah. Because
What-
she was chubby. and
What does that even mean?
I know, right?
Mosquito fat. Being attuned to the way one presents oneself in social situations and adjusting one's performance to create the desired impression is self-monitoring, and we all self-monitor. We look at ourselves in the mirror, we try to determine what we look like during the day. I don't think I checked this out, I didn't check out my outfit today. But normally I check out to make sure my hair's not sticking up in some strange direction. And my tie is on right, you know, okay. So I have to make sure all this. I've only got one mirror in my house. My wife likes that because she doesn't like looking at herself. Some people are high self-monitors while others are low self-monitors. Some people will readily adjust their behavior to their circumstance and the individuals that they are around. So I'll act differently around different people, which makes sense. If you're around a preacher, you don't want to swear, probably. I'm guessing. I do, just to bug them, but you probably don't. That's really kind of smart. Some social settings dictate that the individual adjusts their behavior to fit the social setting. Last night I was trying to walk out of the building and somebody was singing in 199. So I didn't want to walk past the door while I wanted to be respectful of the individual that was singing. He was right at the beginning of that thing, I assume. Anyway, I wanted to be respectful. So I stood there, which was a mistake because it's a really strong odor coming out of that room, I'll tell you. And it was mutton. It was the smell of mutton. And so I got a really good whiff. Now normally I just get away from it, you know. If it smells bad, get away from it. If somebody stinks, you know, if they got too much perfume on, you get away from them because it smells bad. But I couldn't. Because I was trying to be respectful. I didn't know if he was praying. I wasn't exactly sure what the song was all about. But I didn't want to walk past the door. I didn't want people to see me walking out while, you know, a prayer was taking place. So I was in a select social setting, and because of that setting, I couldn't get out of there. And I thought about going back upstairs, but I needed to leave. I really needed to leave. But it was bad. One problem with people who are high self-monitors, they may espouse one idea in one circumstance and opposite in the other. A lot of times people will get a position of power, and they don't think that. Let's see. What am I talking about here? Okay. Sometimes people get a position of power and they don't really have any ideas of their own. So they'll take ideas from other individuals. Or one person will talk to them and they will make a decision in one direction to agree with this guy, and then somebody else will come and talk to them and they'll make an opposite decision. So it all depends on who talks to these people last as to what decision they actually come up with. Whew. And these are usually high self-monitors. These are individuals that want to seem like they're presidential, want to seem like they're important people. They take on this select air, but they really don't have any ideas of their own. So it's other people that make the decisions for them. And these are high self-monitors. High self-monitors are known as social chameleons. And this is what a chameleon actually looks like. These are both chameleons. This is a hog-nosed chameleon, and this is some other chameleon, I don't know. A high self-monitoring is the tendency to use cues from other people's self-presentation in controlling our self-presentations. In other words, these individuals are always looking at the people around them to see how they're supposed to act. And they try to act like everybody else does. And these are social chameleons. I used to call it malleable people. Individuals that would change, and they would change their personalities completely. We see this in the military all the time. Select individual, when they're with lower ranking individuals, they try to be bossy and whatnot. But when they're with somebody that has a higher rank than they do, their personality completely changes. And they start acting in a different manner. They don't seem to have a personality of their own. It's a totally malleable, they have a totally malleable personality. Fascinating just to watch these people. Flip-flop from one personality to another. High self-monitors are skilled impression managers, of course, and that is the end of chapter whatever that one was. That's a picture of my grandson in Florida. He's only about 3 years. I know, he's just a doll baby. I showed you the picture of him in the cockpit, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
You have to see my grandson in the cockpit. Wait a minute.
Are they gonna come out and visit you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. He has to travel to visit his dad. Let me see this little monkey. There he is. He's fine. I know, he's in the cockpit of an airplane. He didn't get to fly the plane, okay? But this is the co-pilot. You can look at the smile on this guy's face. Anyway. Edison's seen this picture like 9 times. He got to sit in the cockpit. Yeah, he's a doll. He's just a doll. Anyway. Okay. Yes, that's my grandson. I don't think they're coming out. He has to travel. Every time he has any time off, he has to go down and visit his dad down in Florida. And unfortunately, where he lives is is like 3 miles north of that high school where all the shooting took place. My daughter's boyfriend, or whatever he is. What is it? Baby daddy. Let's call him baby daddy. Is that a good name? Oh, if it fits. The shoe fits, right? That's the baby daddy. Anyway, okay. How much time do I have? How am I doing? 9:55? I'm doing great. Okay. So this is chapter 6, and this is the 6th week. Poor Curtis has never been in a class with me where I actually stayed up with where I was supposed to be. So this is something new for Curtis. He's probably shocked that I'm on chapter 6. 1997, really kind of an interesting year. Hale-Bopp comet was streaking across the sky. When I say streaking across, I mean you could just see it. It was just sitting there, and then tomorrow it's over here. You know, it looks like a star. It's a comet, and it was a Hale-Bopp comet. Well, there was a group of individuals, 39 individuals in California, that decided that there was a spaceship in the tail of Hale-Bopp, and they were going to be drawn up. The aliens were going to take them up into the spaceship, and then they were going to go to paradise. They were going to be taken to paradise. Are you getting the picture? So I can go to paradise if I join this group because the Hale-Bopp comet is streaking across the sky, and there's a spaceship back there. Okay? Or is this exciting or what? So they call themselves Heaven's Gate, and they lived in Rancho Santa Fe, California. On March 26th, they all committed suicide. All 39 of them. There were 5 people that weren't there when they committed suicide. And those 5 people eventually did commit suicide. Each one of them committed suicide on their own. The cult members died willingly and peacefully and didn't really consider it suicide. They didn't consider it suicide because they were going to join the aliens in paradise, which you can't argue with paradise. This is the leader. When members of the Heaven's Gate cult could not find, actually they bought a telescope. This is really kind of interesting. They bought a telescope, a huge telescope, to look at, to find the spaceship so that they could, visualize where they were going. Well, they bought the telescope and they couldn't find the spaceship behind the comet. Couldn't find it, so they returned it. They got a total refund on their telescope. Their attitude was clear, and given their premise, their logic was impeccable. We know an alien spaceship is following behind the Hale-Bopp comet, and if an expensive telescope failed to reveal the spaceship, then there must be something wrong with the telescope, obviously. They knew it was there. They knew where it was. Generally speaking, the members of the Heaven's Gate cult were not stupid, they were not irrational, and they were not crazy. Now this is kind of a problem because all these people committed suicide. Now normally we would like to think that there was something wrong with these people. But there was nothing wrong with them. They weren't nuts. They had a mistaken idea. That's all they had. Just like this kid that shot up, this 19-year-old that shot up the school. Maybe he just had a wrong idea. Maybe he wasn't crazy at all. But of course, for us to keep going, for us to keep sending our kids to school, we've got to think, this is abnormal. This isn't right. And that's what they were talking about last night. How can I go back to school on Monday if I'm afraid I'm going to be shot? If I'm afraid of school now, because they are. I mean, he was hunting kids in the hallway. He was walking up and down the hall and hunting people. And when he saw them, he shot them and killed them. Well, he killed 17. Didn't kill all of them. The neighbors of these the Heaven's Gate people considered them pleasant, smart, and reasonable people. They were as normal as anybody. Just like the people that were taking care of the kid said that he was a normal kid. He did everything they told him to do. Of course, they didn't know he was going to shoot up the school. They could have told him not to do it. You can see these guys put videos. They were computer wizards. They were computer people, and they worked on computers. So they made a lot of videos before they committed suicide. And you can look at these if you want. Heaven's Gate. It's really fascinating to listen to these people talking. I mean, they're happy. They're giddy. They're goofy. They're really pleasant people. And then on the 26th of March, of course, they committed suicide. Their behavior was an extreme example of a normal human tendency, the need to justify our actions. And that's what they were doing. They were justifying their actions. And you can look at all these videos if you like. It's really fascinating to look at them. And if you look at them, you're going to say, well, there's nothing wrong with these people. Because potentially there is nothing wrong with these people. But they did commit suicide. And that's abnormal, we hope. It's abnormal. Or is it abnormal? Is suicide sometimes justified?
No.
Ever? Never?
I
Never ever?
maybe like if you have really terminal cancer.
What if you want to go to heaven?
Wasn't it the Japan soldiers where they?
Committed suicide? Yeah,
Yeah.
bonsai. Well, that's a different culture. Yeah, it's a different culture.
What about resuscitation or like
DNRs?
Yeah.
Do not resuscitate?
Yeah, is that suicide? Because
No.
my grandma, when she was in the hospital, she signed that paper saying do not resuscitate.
Yeah.
So it's not suicide.
No, I wouldn't call it suicide. I'd say, nah, okay, I'm tired. Let me go. Leave me alone.
Well, making a note. And
Sorry?
committing to the military.
I'm sorry?
Taking a note to the military, signing your life away and say, if I die, I die.
I die, I'm going to sacrifice myself for my country. There you go. That's okay though, isn't it? We didn't have those guys. Who would be protecting us from ISIS or whatever? Or whoever. Or the Russians.
But there's a sense of thought of suicide or committing, taking your own life or putting your life in danger.
Putting your life in danger. Fixing other people while bullets are zipping around your head. Why would you do that? That's stupid. I'm not even thinking about being shot. I just want to make sure that this guy doesn't die. I should be hiding someplace. People are shooting at me. The thing about joining the military is you know you're not going to die. It's the other guy that's going to die. The guy that's standing beside you is going to get shot. You're not going to get shot. I'm not even going to get hurt. I'm going to come through unscathed. I'm bulletproof, especially if you're young. Everybody thinks they're bulletproof when they're young. But, of course, nobody is. That's what it looked like. They committed suicide, and they covered themselves up. They took poison, and then they covered themselves up. They all wore the same outfit so that when they went up to, when they went up to the spaceship, when they went to paradise, they would all have on Nikes, because that's what you wear in paradise. Does anybody have on Nikes? Do we have any Nike people here? No?
I do.
Okay, there you go. That's perfect. There it is.
Paradise.
Okay. I've got on Newton's. What's the probability I'm going to go to paradise? 0. I can tell you that right now. Good. Okay, so we're all going to wear Nikes on Tuesday. No, just kidding.
I was like, what?
I don't own any Nikes, okay?
Yeah.
So I can't wear Nikes. I'm going to have to stay here. And you guys get to go to paradise just because of the Nikes. We humans strive to maintain a relatively favorable view of ourselves, particularly when we encounter evidence that contradicts our typically rosy self-image. And we do. We stay away from unpleasant truths, and we look for comforting lies. If you're conservative, then you watch Fox News, because Fox News makes you feel better. If you're not conservative, potentially you watch CNN or MSNBC. Because that makes you feel more comfortable. Are there truths on Fox News? Yeah, somewhere. I'm sure they're in there somewhere. I don't know. But a lot of times, a lot of it's opinion instead of news, and unfortunately, of course, opinion is one thing, and truth is something totally different. We've got a president that's trying to tell us what is right and what's wrong. And if it says anything negative about him, it must be fake news. Because that's an unpleasant truth that he doesn't want to deal with. And he can convince some select individuals that he's right. And these are the people that watch Fox News. Especially Fox, there's something in the morning. There's some morning show that he's on all the time. It's really kind of fascinating. He's just the most fascinating individual I've ever come in contact with. Most of us want to believe that we are reasonable, decent folks who make wise decisions, do not behave immorally, and have integrity. We want to feel that way. We want to believe that we do not do stupid, cruel, or absurd things. Sometimes we do dumb things. Sometimes we do dumb things. Okay, we do. Sticking your tongue on a cactus is probably not the smartest thing you could possibly do.
And stupid people swallowing Tide Pods or something.
No, sure. Up north, when it's really cold, you stick your tongue on something metal. That's the dumbest thing in the world, because your tongue will freeze to the metal, and then you can't get it off. You have to cut it off with a knife.
No.
You have to shave it off.
Water.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't?
No, you just get more ice around your tongue. No, you got to take a knife and you got to peel it off of there. It takes the skin off the top surface. You've never done that? You've never touched your tongue?
Bruce, have you heard of the Piccadilly?
Piccadilly Square in London.
Oh, okay. Well, there's this new trend going around.
Uh-oh.
And it's kind of like sticking your tongue on the cold part.
Right.
But it's a pickle that you dice up. You put into a free or icy, like
Okay.
a slushy,
Okay.
with like gummy bears sometimes, or gummy worms
Kool-Aid.
and Kool-Aid.
It's
Okay.
actually good. I think it is.
Pickles are dill.
Yeah, I like it.
Whatever.
Made for hamburgers.
So what do you drink this stuff?
You can
eat
chew
It's
it.
like eating ice and pickle.
Pickles and Kool-Aid.
It's like sweet
And
and
Kool-Aid.
sour.
Okay.
I
It's
tried
good
it.
to me.
Oh my god, I tried it. It was,
That bad, huh?
yes, it was really bad.
Pickle bottle. That sounds crazy. stupid, absurd, and maybe cruel.
It has a weird taste, but once it settles in, it's pretty good. And then
Yeah.
it's addictive.
It
It's
is.
addictive.
You want
Okay.
more.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
That sounds like something you would
I
eat
tried
when
it
you-
and it was good. I thought it was gonna be ugly. And when
Did
I
you-
tried it, it was good.
It's good. So now you have one every morning for breakfast.
Yeah. F1 over here, Solar Howling.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they sell it bootlegging joint.
Oh, this is too much fun. Okay. I don't think I'll try it. Sounds like something my first wife would eat during her pregnancy. She did the oddest thing. She would buy a pizza, and she wouldn't eat it when it was warm, but she'd eat it the next morning with mayonnaise spread all over it.
Whoa.
Oh. She ate, cherry peppers. Those cherry peppers, she'd eat them by the jar full. And we'd buy gallon jars, and half of it would be gone by the time I came home from work. She'd eat cherry peppers, and now my kids are just addicted to cherry peppers. They developed a taste for it. If we are confronted with information implying that we may have behaved in ways that are irrational, immoral, or stupid, we experience a good deal of discomfort. And this is one of the reasons I hate to take my car in to the guy that fixes cars, because he always tells me about how stupid I am and how I could have fixed it if I just touched this or put something on that. And the same thing happens with computers, doesn't it happen? I hope it doesn't happen to you guys. But I'll take my computer to somebody because I can't get something to work, and they'll go, oh, okay, and they just touch something. It's something on my keyboard, and all of a sudden, whatever was wrong with it is fixed. And you feel so stupid. That's me, unfortunately. Cognitive dissonance is discomfort that people feel when two cognitions, beliefs, or attitudes conflict, or when they behave in ways that are inconsistent with their conception of themselves. This is taking place right now in the United States. There's a ton of cognitive dissonance because there are a lot of people that are convinced that the Second Amendment is the most important amendment to the Constitution, and they want everybody to have weapons. And now we've got the school shooting, and the kids are screaming, "You're wrong." So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. And you could see it last night with Marco Rubio. I don't know why he went to that thing. The guy's got brass. He's okay. Anyway, yeah, it was a really brave thing for him to do because he got slammed all over the place. The NRA lady, she just tried to make excuses, and she tried to change the subject, which is a good way of doing things. But the cognitive dissonance going on in the United States is real. It's very interesting because for the longest time, nobody wanted to ban any weapons whatsoever. They didn't want to ban any large clips. They didn't want to ban any of this stuff. Now all of a sudden, even Marco said last night that he wanted to ban clips that were larger than 17, held more than 17 rounds. One of the problems with these high-capacity magazines is that, of course, they don't have to change. And if they don't have to change the clip, they can shoot. They can just keep shooting, and you don't have an opportunity to attack them. You're waiting for them to change the clip or whatever, and you don't have the opportunity to do that. These large. Well, the kid in Aurora had he had a drum of 100 rounds of ammunition, and so he just kept popping away at people. And of course, people thought, well, if I get 3 seconds, I can rush the guy. Well, you can't do that because of the high capacity magazines. Okay. Anyway, so there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on in the United States right now. People that are in favor of the Second Amendment rights. Does that mean that they have to allow you to have any gun that you want? Well, right now, or before this incident, that was the idea. But now that we have this new dialogue with these kids saying, you know, the high-capacity magazines, the AR-15, there's no reason for anybody to have a military weapon in the United States. Not a civilian. The police maybe, the military definitely need military weapons, but do civilians need guns that will shoot
You know, the,
in that kind of a
Fox-
fashion?
The Fox News people, the believers, I think that when you try to argue with them about the Second Amendment and owning guns and everything, there's this no reaching them.
There's no dialogue, you can't create a dialogue with them.
Yeah, you just can't, you know, you try and tell them, you know, well, especially if their family is military or
Right.
police or something, you know, and they're living on Social Security and they're just like, oh yes, Trump, yeah, you know, cut my benefits in half as long as I can eat a piece of bread a day, or, you know, I don't know, but these people, they just, it should be like Fox News disorder or something.
Francis is embarrassed up here because he wants to.
Oh, do you watch Fox?
No, I'm just kidding. I don't
I'm sorry.
I have no cable.
Yeah. So he can't get Fox. Okay, I was just kidding.
I think it would be nice to, well, I kind of agree, like, to have instructors or, you know, civilians have a gun on them all the time to protect themselves. Go back into the old ways, those old Western movies.
I
Have a
don't-
gun with you and,
I don't want
you know,
to.
protect yourself.
I don't need to protect myself.
You don't need to?
No.
Look at the old ways, though. If people
No, I
are
don't
mad,
need to
they
protect
just shoot
myself.
each other.
If I have a gun, and Curtis decides that he wants my gun, you know, and maybe he can sneak up behind me and take it from me. It's possible. The more weapons you have, the more dangerous it is. So Francis gets pissed off because I give him a B and he wanted an A. So he decides he's going to shoot everybody in the class. That happens. That could potentially
Yeah.
happen. You get a thug, and of course he doesn't have a gun of his own.
But I have the chance to pull it out while somebody's shooting and protect myself.
I don't think so. It's not the way it works, is it? It doesn't work that way. Even if people have weapons, they don't pull them. And there's a reason that they don't, and the reason is because then the police will think that you're the shooter. Even though you're trying to protect, or you think that you're protecting other people. How do you have a, you know, all of a sudden you get a halo over your head because you're the good guy? It's not the way it works. The police are just looking for the shooter. And if you've got a gun, then you may be that guy. How do they know? The difference between a good guy and a bad guy, well, there is no difference between a good guy and a bad guy. Can you tell a bad guy gun from a good guy gun? My brother.
Bad guy gun, everything is probably modified. Good guy gun is locked up in a safe.
I think one of the things you got to see that gun before you can figure it out. But if I've got Edison in the back of the room with a gun, I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I haven't figured it out. So I'll probably take him out, just in case. Just in case. Cognitive dissonance, Leon Fessinger came up with the idea in 1957. He was the first psychologist to deal with the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance. And it came out of, right after World War II, we had a communist scare in the United States. And there was an individual by the name of McCarthy. Not Eugene McCarthy, Joe McCarthy. It was Joe McCarthy. And he started accusing everybody of being a communist. He changed Hollywood, shut down Hollywood because there were some writers who were communists. There were some actors who were communists, and they blacklisted them. And so those writers couldn't write for Hollywood anymore, and those actors couldn't act in Hollywood anymore. He was accusing people in Congress of being communists, of being flip-flopping between, they were just too liberal, and that made them too close to communism. He called them pinkos. They were pink. Instead of being red, they were pink. Get it? As cute as that is. Richard Nixon, the first time he ran for Congress, he ran against a lady and he called her pink. He kept referring to her as pink. And he won the election because he convinced enough people that she was a little bit too liberal. So there was this whole thing going on in the United States, and people really didn't want to become communist. They didn't want our country to become communist, but at the same time, they didn't know who was good and who was bad. So there was a lot of cognitive dissonance going on in the United States. We had ultra-right conservative groups like the John Birch Society were telling people that in order to be a patriot, you've got to have these ideas. You've got to be so anti-communist that you're willing to do anything. And that's where this came out of. That's where, when Leon Festinger realized there were a lot of people in the United States who were good people, they were patriots, but they weren't anti-communist. And that's what McCarthy wanted. And McCarthy, of course, this is in 1954. McCarthy was attacking, he had the Senate hearings, and you can look at them if you want on television. It's really kind of frightening because he would say, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And that's all he would ask them. And he would ask them over and over again. No matter what they said back to him, he would say, are you a member of the Communist Party? And this went on for years. And he had all kinds of power in the United States, Joe McCarthy. And then finally he went up against the United States Army. And of course, the Army was fighting in Korea at the time, and he tried to pin these lieutenants and majors and colonels down. And these guys said, "We're not going to answer that. That is not a question that you need to ask. We are protecting you." And at that point, of course, the people of the United States went, "You know, the Army saved us against fascism during World War II, and now they're fighting against communism. How in the world can we attack these people?" And of course, at that point, Joe McCarthy lost his power. But we had a lot of people in the United States, I mean, the newspapers weren't exactly sure how to write this stuff down. It was like they were believing what Donald Trump says. So nobody knew what was right and what was wrong. They didn't know truth from fantasy. They weren't exactly sure. So we had all this cognitive dissonance going on in the United States. Really conservative places, they said that Joe McCarthy was right. Really non-conservative places said Joe McCarthy was wrong. And so all this cognitive dissonance was taking place in the middle 1950s. There are three basic ways that we try to reduce cognitive dissonance: by changing our behavior to bring it in line with the dissonant cognition. So if the idea is communism, when I'm talking to Francis, since he's so avid and anti-communist, I will try to think the way that Francis thinks. It makes me feel better, because if I want to argue with you, it hurts my brain. It bothers me if I have to argue with you. So I will try to think the way that you think. So I will try to change my dissonant cognition. By attempting to justify our behavior through changing one of the dissonant cognitions, maybe I will join the John Birch Society. That's the way I'm going to take care of my problem. By attempting to justify our behavior by adding new cognitions, well, wait a minute, well, maybe we need to talk about something other than communism and patriotism. Maybe we need to talk about something else. Come up with new cognitions. A perfect way to think about this is talking about smoking. How much time do I have? Oh, I have to stop right here. Okay, we'll talk about smoking next time. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you, I had a good time today. Sorry that I can't stomach mutton.
That happened yesterday. I was coming in my room with the main dorm, and I walked by this room and the door was open. I didn't know what was in there, and it just, dang, it smells like, I don't know, it smells like something rotted in there. And it's just horrible, and I walked through it and I was like, shit, what is that? And I had the biggest headache afterwards. My stomach was turning. I was like trying to throw up on my way walking this way, and it wouldn't come out. It's just like, what is that?
I know. You know, and some people eat that kind of stuff. When I was in Vietnam, what they do is they take all the fish parts and they put it in a jar. And they'll put it in the ground, and they bury it in the ground and let it ferment. And then they'll take it out, and all the bones are dissolved because it's a fermentation process. So it's dissolved all the fish bones, and they'll use it as a sauce for their rice. Fermented fish sauce. It's called nukmam. Oh my God! People swear by this stuff. It smells so bad. My God. Oh. Nukmam. So if anybody ever offers you Nook Mom, you know exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just horrible yesterday.
I
was
can't
like-
stand it. The smell of fish.
Yeah.
Because rotten fish. All fish smells the same. I know. Salmon. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh, that's the mountain tribes.
Yeah.
She was right.
Oh.
They're buffalo hunters.
Yeah, it just
They don't
really
eat fish.
stinks. I don't know if something like there was like
Uh-oh.
dead something in that.
I told
room.
my Nook Mom story.